So, chapter 16, we're going to call this Ramble On. Previously on the book of Shmuel, part Bet, we saw the beginning of Avshalom's rebellion, which happened in stages, all while David sat on his hands. Then we saw David's reaction, which was to neither confirm nor deny the new king, but rather leave the scene, right? In his travels, he meets a number of supporters and establishes his network of spies. That's going to come in handy in the upcoming chapters as those men go to work disrupting Avshalom's councils and informing David of what is going on. As an aside, I think last time after the recording, we had this question about why Achitofel is doing what he's doing. We're going to see that question becomes even stronger, immediately. The answer that we provide is from Radak and others that Achitofel is possibly the grandfather of Bathsheba. From a story perspective, that's got a lot going for it because textually it checks out. We're going to see in chapter 23 that he's listed as the father of Elam, and Elam is also listed as the father of Bathsheba. So through like the commutative property of conservation of characters, poof, we have means and motive for him, avenging what happened to his granddaughter.
Yes, Sam, quick question.
Yeah,
I
please.
missed chapter 15, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago. But what did you discuss, like what Avshalom's motive was at this time?
Yeah. So what we talked about was Avshalom thinks that, and maybe he's kind of right, that David is checked out, that he's not responsive anymore as king, based on, first of all, what happened with Bathsheba, and then after that, David has taken a very passive role in everything that he's done. And so that's why we even raised the question, we'll, I think, raise it again. What was Avshalom expecting? Was Avshalom rebelling, or was he figuring this is just the natural progression? David is not doing anything anymore. He's not actively being the king. So let me go be the king instead, and he'll probably just let it happen like he lets everything else happen. In other words, was he surprised that David ran away? Was he expecting to be welcomed into Yerushalayim and have David say, "Yes, this makes a lot of sense to me"? We're going to try to answer that question a little bit.
Last question. Does he have any idea that who was? Nobody knows who was supposed to be the successor at this point.
No.
So
No, as far as
he
I know.
thinks it might be him. He doesn't think it might be Shlomo.
He has no reason to assume that it won't be him. The only thing that we know about Shlomo is that Hashem loves him. Okay, so chapter 16, Pasuk Aleph, David avar ma'at meharosh, v'hinei tziva nar mefiboshes likraso. So David passes a little beyond the rosh. This word rosh is going to come up again and again. He's at the rosh of the mountain. People are going to be rude to David, and the soldiers are going to say, "Let me remove his rosh." David obviously is the king. He's the head of the whole nation. So tziva nar mefiboshes comes to meet him. If you recall, we've met Ziba before, right? He was the one who David was looking for any remnant, any children of Yehonatan, and he met this guy Ziba, who was the caretaker of the estate of Shaul, and he asked if there's anyone, and Ziba says that yes, in fact, there's this guy Mephibosheth out in Lo Davar. So David now bumps into Ziba again. And it looks like Tziva's out to meet David. He comes Likrosovit, Semen, Chamorim, Chavushim, and he has donkeys like filled with stuff for David. V'alehem matayim lechem, umea tzmukim, umea kayitz, v'nevel yayin. He's got 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisin, and 100 cakes of figs, plus jars of wine, all for David and his famished group who are, out running away without a lot of provisions. This seems to be a little bit similar to what Avigail brought David back in part Aleph. I don't think we're going to have to see it inside, but the source there is chapter 25, pasuk 18. So David is again in a situation where he's kind of dependent on a dubious person to feed his troops. So what does Ziba have to say for himself? David says to Ziba, "Ma ela lach." What is all this stuff? And Vayomer Tziva Chamorim lebeis hamelech lirkov vehalechem v'hakayitz leechol hanearim v'hayen lishtos hayaef b'mibar. All this is for your entourage, right? You've got donkeys to ride on now. The bread and figs are for your attendees. The wine is to be drunk by anybody who's exhausted in the wilderness. In other words, he's polite enough to say, like, I'm taking care of your people, not you. Like, God forbid the king should need assistance. I'm doing this out of deference. Vayomer Hamelech. Va'aye ben adonecha, and where is, it's a funny way of saying this. What he should really be saying is, where is your master? But Ziba's master was Yehonatan. So now we're talking about Mephibosheth as ben adonecha. Vayomer Ziba el Hamelech hine yoshev b'Yushalayim. He's back in Yerushalayim. If you recall from last time we met Mephibosheth, David had told Mephibosheth, "You're going to eat at my table permanently." So it makes sense that Mephibosheth is in Yerushalayim. But now Ziba continues and tells you a little bit more information than what David had asked. Ki Amar, why is he in Yerushalayim, you might ask? Because he's saying, Hayom yashivu li beis Yisrael es mamlachos avi. Today, the nation of Yisrael will return to me the throne of from my father's house. So I'm going to be king. That is what Ziba is telling David that Mephibosheth is saying. So I'll ask you on the spot: do we buy this?
Mm-hmm.
Is Ziba being honest or dishonest?
Why would he have reason to lie?
Why would he have reason to lie?
I don't know. All of a sudden, how many years later is this? How many years have passed?
A few.
To curry favor with David, like the same way.
Decades.
Maybe,
It's the end of the. It's near the end of
right.
David, and that's close to the beginning of David.
Right. That's fair.
This is just like another
It's
Game
weird.
of Thrones kind of thing, where he's trying to get like favor and.
So I mean, from a motivation perspective, then yeah, Ziba has a lot of reason to sell out his master, because if he sells out his master and David comes back into power, then that bodes well for Ziba. And if David doesn't come back into power, then he has nothing to lose.
Right.
It doesn't make much sense for Mephibosheth to have actually said this. Because why would he assume that Avshalom, like there's no logic, there's no foundation to any of this like statement. Nobody is talking about making Mephibosheth king. He's been in David's good graces this whole time. Like it doesn't make sense. But I want to go one step beyond that and say that David is setting himself up to be lied to. Meaning, Ziba comes with a whole bunch of stuff. Great. Why are you asking where's Mephibosheth? Why would you assume Mephibosheth would come with you? You're on the run for your life from expecting to be in battle at any moment, right? Mephibosheth is a cripple. You want him to join you in his wheelchair? What's the expectation? Asking the question precipitates the lie, right? And it confirms for us what we suspected back when we met Ziba in the first place, which is he's not really interested in Mephibosheth's best interests. Vayomer Hamelech. So now it seems that it worked. Vayomer Hamelech letziva. Oh, really? That's what Mephibosheth. That's how he repays me for all the kindness. Hinei l'chol kol asher leMephibosheth. You now own everything that Mephibosheth owned. I'm the king. I can Hefker Beis and Hefker, whatever he had is now yours. I'm going to bow down to you, your majesty, so gracious that I found favor in your eyes. This works out very well for Ziba, and he scurries off to lay claim to all the inheritance that he's now managed to pilfer from his master. Uba Hamelech David, and this is not going to be the last time we meet up with Ziba, by the way. He'll get his comeuppance, sort of. Uba Hamelech David ad Bachurim. And now David comes to the town of Bachurim. V'hinei misham ish yotzim mishpachat Beit Shaul. And a man comes out from the town of Bachurim, and he is from the family of Shaul. So this is person number 2 who's like from the family, the house of Shaul, from Shevet Binyamin Ushmo. And this is someone you may have heard of, Shimi ben Gera. Shimi ben Gera comes out to greet David on his as David is fleeing Yerushalayim. Yotzei Yatso Mikalel. He comes out hurling insults at David. He is cursing David. This doesn't seem like a very intelligent thing to do. Vayisakel ba'avanim, and now he starts chucking stones at David. As David is chol avdei hamelech, David v'chol ha'am v'chol hagiborim mimino mismalo. And the pasuk now points out why this is kind of a stupid move. David is surrounded by a bunch of soldiers, right? We talked before. He has the crazy in place, or his shock troops that are with him as he's fleeing Yerushalayim. So David has a militia with him. Probably not a great idea for a lone person to be throwing stones at them. V'cho amar Shimi b'kalalo, and so says Shimi in his cursing. Say ish hadamim, go out, man of blood, v'ish habilyal, and a man who is a criminal. Heshiva lecha Adonai, kol demei beis Shaul. God should pay back to you all the blood of the house of Shaul. One of the things we're going to see at the coda at the end of this book is that David actually had to put to death a number of other children of the house of Shaul. Asher malachta tachtav, that you are now king instead of him. V'yitena Adonai es hamlucha b'yad Avshalom. And I would rather, even though I come from the house of Shaul, I'm not asking for the kingship myself. I would rather Avshalom be king, Banecha, your son. V'hincha b'ra'ascha ki ish damimata, and you'll be for the wicked. You'll come to a terrible end because you are a man of blood. Vayomer Avishai ben Tzeruya, and this is another one of the Bnei Tzeruya, not Yoav. We talked about last time that we're assuming Yoav is out somewhere maintaining the empire. So Avishai says to El HaMelech, Lami kalel hakelev hames hazem. Why are you letting this dead dog curse you? Es Adoni HaMelech. Ebranav asira es rosho. Let me go remove his head. Right? This is Mor b'malchus. He's chayiv misa. Let's just go take care of him. There's a lot that's interesting over here. David actually has referred to himself previously as a hakelev hames. Chazal actually talk about Shimi ben Gera in very interesting terms. They cast him as a huge Talmid Chacham. He was the Rebbe of Shlomo. It's also, I don't know how much to go into this, but we talked about how David's sin really traced back to Gan Eden. I think there is a continuation of that theme throughout the rest of our book. We talked about how the story of the woman of Tekoa is about these two brothers, right? And it parallels the story of Cain and Hevel. Now we have someone coming and cursing David and throwing dirt at him and telling him that he is an ish damim. All of those things are allusions, I believe, to the story of Gan Eden. Last chapter, everybody that met up with David was seeking his welfare. This chapter, we're going to see everyone that meets up with David is seeking his detriment. Okay, let's keep going. Vayomer HaMelech, ma'aliv lachem b'nei Tzeruya. What is wrong with you, b'nei Tzeruya? Ko yikalel, so should he curse. Ki Adonai amar lo kalel, because God said he should curse. Es David. Umi yomar madua asisa. And who are you to say why is he doing this? This is from God. This is not this guy. There's clearly a divine hand in everything that's happening to me. Vayomer David el Avishai ve'el kol avadav. Hine b'ni asher yatsa me'me'ai mevakeshes nafshi. Guys, they're like context. My own flesh and blood is out to kill me. V'av kiata ben hayimini hanichulo. And this Binyamin, leave him alone. V'kalel, and he will curse. Ki amar lo Adonai, because that is what God has told him to do. Ula yira Adonai be'eni v'heshiv Adonai li tovat hachas ki lo hayom hazeh. Maybe Hashem will see my affliction, my punishment, and he will return me to the good for taking this curse as part of my punishment for everything that happened as a result of the Bathsheba incident. This response is really shocking. The king is supposed to have,
he's not allowed to be
mochel on his cover, right?
Yeah.
And how can you expect your ragtag group of soldiers to have any respect for you if you're not going to rebuff the scoffer? I should point out, though, it's really important that he didn't kill Shimi, because otherwise we don't have Purim, right? Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish, right? Mordechai comes from Shimi ben Gera. So that's kind of helpful. Okay, let's keep going. So they continue traveling. And you can picture Shimi up on top of the they're down walking through the valley. Shimi's up on the highland. La'umaso, holech v'kalel v'sakel b'avanim la'umaso v'ifar ba'efer, and he's hurling insults and throwing stones and dirt at them as they go, continuing to curse them on their way. And David and all the people with him come, and they are exhausted, even though they were provided provisions by Ziba. V'yinafesh sham, and they rest over there. This word v'yinafesh doesn't occur very often in Tanakh, and it usually has it's connected to Shabbos. Avshalom v'chol ha'am ish Yisrael bo'u shalayim, and this information was provided to us at the end of chapter 15, but this is the sort of standard in Tanakh that if you have an interlude, you get a repeating the last important part of the previous story. So Avshalom now arrives in Yerushalayim, and the real important part is Achitofel ito. Achitofel is together with Avshalom. Vayihi kasher ba Hushai ha'arki. Now in chapter 15, we found out that Hushai is going to be a double agent. He came, he offered to join up with David. David says, "I have no use for you, old man. Why don't you go back? And you should undermine anything that Achitofel says. Whatever advice Achitofel gives, I want you to ruin it, because Achitofel's advice is like the Orm V'Tomim. He's never wrong." So Vayikasher ba Hushai ha'arki Rea David, right? He's David's friend. He comes to Avshalom. Vayomer Hushai el Avshalom yichi hamelech, long live the king. Vayomer Avshalom el Hushai, dude, you're in big trouble. Zechastecha es reacha. This is how you're going to be kind to your friend, meaning to David. Lama lo halachta es reacha. Why didn't you go with your friend David? What are you doing over here? Remember, he has to walk a very tight rope over here. He can't seem like a traitor to David, because if he's a traitor to David, he could be a traitor to Avshalom. So he has to kind of make sure he's in Avshalom's good graces. Vayomer Hushai el Avshalom lo ki asher bachar Adonai. I don't serve David. I serve whoever God chose. V'ha'am hazeh, and whoever the people chose. V'chol ish Yisrael lo eheyeh v'ito eshev. And all the people of Yisrael have chosen you, so I stay with him. I stay with you. You're the king. I serve at the pleasure of the king. Vashenis, second, lemi ani evod. Second of all, I recognize exactly what you, Avshalom, want me to recognize, which is that you are the continuation of David. You're not rebelling against David. You are the natural progression. You are the inheritor of David's throne, and therefore, by rights, you are king, and I'm here to serve you as David's inheritor. Vayomer Avshalom, and that's exactly what Avshalom wants to hear. So Hushai has now made it past his first test.
He passed the spot check.
Right, exactly. Let's just see if there's anything over here. There's an interesting Korean Ktiv. Okay. So, Pasuk 19, Pasuk 20. Vayomer Avshalom el Achitofel. So now Avshalom turns to his trusted advisor Achitofel, and he says, Havu lachem eitza mana aseh. What do you, okay, we did it. We're here, we're in Yerushalayim, now what? Vayomer Achitofel el Avshalom, bo el pilagshe avicha. You need to assert that you are the king. In the ancient world, taking the wife of the king, or in this case, the concubines of the king, is a way to establish yourself as the new king. And so that is what you need to do. Bo el pilagshe avicha. Remember, David left his concubines to guard the house, quote unquote. Shama kol Yisrael, and all Yisrael will hear that you are now despised by your father. There's no way that this is ever going to reconcile after you do such a thing. It's a full break from David. And that will embolden all the people who've picked your side. Vayatu la Avshalom ha'ohel, and so they make a canopy for Avshalom al Hagag on the roof of the king's palace. Vayavo Avshalom el pilagshe aviv le'inei kol Yisrael, and Avshalom enters into the tent with all of David's pilagshim in front of the eyes of all Yisrael. In other words, everybody sees what he is doing. Now, a few things to point out over here. First of all, Achitofel doesn't say to do something this brazen. He says to sleep with the pilagshim. He doesn't say to do so in public. He says v'shama kol Yisrael, and everyone will hear, not that they will see. I think Avshalom is going one step beyond what Achitofel is saying over here. Second of all, there is kind of poetic irony over here that it was David walking on this very same roof that caused the incident in the first place. This is the fulfillment. The Navi told David this is what is going to happen, right? He said that your friend will sleep with your wives in broad daylight after you did this thing in private. So this is the fulfillment of that prophecy.
Probably said your friend.
He didn't say your son. He said your friend. The question that I have not seen asked anywhere is, I guess we can ask it over here. We said that Hushai's job was double agent.
Yeah.
Specifically, what's he supposed to do?
Protect David.
No, he's supposed to contradict the advice of Achitofel.
It's
Right.
good advice, you know, if you
Right.
contradict all good
And here
advice.
he doesn't
All-
say boo.
Right.
Well, is
Thi-
it good advice? I don't know, it's neutral. Is it?
It's
gonna
definitely
embolden. They say it's going to embolden the people.
it's definitely advice from Achitofel that Hushai doesn't say anything about.
Right. But he does later when Achitofel tries
Well, here's the
to start a war.
Yes, he does later, but how does
Yes.
Hushai know that there's going to be a later? Like maybe this is the one and only advice that Achitofel is going to give. Why not pipe up over here? So I have not seen anybody ask this question. The Malbim a little bit says that Achitofel wasn't even giving advice. He was telling Avshalom, "You have to do this, otherwise I'm not gonna stick around with you." So this is almost like blackmail. The answers I can offer you, again, I have not seen because I haven't seen the question, but first of all, I think that Hushai only gets to offer advice when asked. In other words, later on, they're going to ask Avshalom's advice and then they're going to ask Hushai's advice. If they don't ask your advice, to just pipe up and give your advice is going to out you as a double agent pretty quickly and easily. I think also here not picking a fight with Achitofel over this gives him more believability. If he lets this happen, then Avshalom thinks, okay, that
everyone's on board.
Right, everyone's on board. And also, when David says contradict the advice of Achitofel, he adds the word li. The advice of Achitofel about me, meaning Hushai only needs to worry about advice of Achitofel that is a direct attack on David versus any old advice that Achitofel gives. Those are some of the ways I try to answer that question. Okay, let's keep going. V'yatzatz Achitofel asher ya'atz bayamim hahem, and the advice that Achitofel gave in those days, kasher yish'al ish b'dvar ha'elohim, kain kol atzatz Achitofel gam LaDavid, gam LaAvshalom. The advice of Achitofel was like asking God, meaning asking the Urim v'Tumim over here, in that he's never wrong. Achitofel is the wisest one in the bunch. I want to try to finish chapter 17 as well, so let's just press ahead. Vayomer Achitofel el Avshalom. Ev charana 12,000 ish v'yakuma ve'erdefa acharei David halayla. Let me take 12,000 men, like 1,000 from every shevet. Everyone is represented. We're all in this together, and I'm going to pursue David halayla. So the chronology of this is a little murky. Does chapter 17 have like?
Is this like the next day, or is
Right.
it a year later?
Right. It's definitely not a year later. Like David is still running away.
Right.
And then we're kind of cutting back from, okay, David, we're going to tell you David's story through, several incidents of him running away. And then we're going to cut back to Avshalom just arrived in Yerushalayim. Then Avshalom sleeps with all of David's concubines. Then he talks to Achitofel, who's like, let me go tonight. Is this the same night that you arrived in Yerushalayim? Unclear. But I want to immediately, the point here is that we don't want to waste any time. Let's go get David immediately. The avo I love, and we'll reach him. And he is exhausted. He has no energy. These terms yagea and rafei yadayim remind us of language that was used by Amalek. And they meet Amalek in Refidim. Refidim is ripu yadayim. The charadati also, and I'm going to terrorize everybody over there. Vanas kol ha'am, everyone's going to flee. Asher yitova ha'kesis hamelech levado, and there won't be any casualties. We'll kill the king. Done. One, two, three. Let's get this over with. Right? It's like Scott and Dr. Evil. Let's just kill him right here, right now. Be done with it. V'yashiva kol ha'am elecha keshuv ha'kol ha'ish asher atam mevakesh kol ha'am yeh shalom. Let everybody come. Everyone's going to be in peace. Everyone's going to rally around you. This is going to be great, says Achitofel. And we, the reader, are terrified now because we remember the pasuk at the end of the last parak that says, everything Achitofel says is right. This is the right move. If you're on Team Avshalom, you hear this and you're like, yes, go. Do exactly this. Ve'yashar hadavar b'nei Avshalom u'b'nei kol ziknei Yisrael. Avshalom likes this. All the Zakanim who have now teamed up with Avshalom like this. Everyone is on team. Let's go kill David immediately. That is the right move. And we even get a stuma to build up the tension for the reader. Vayomer Avshalom, Karana gam lechushai ha'arki, nishma ma bepiv gam hu. I hear you. Let's get one more opinion. Call Hushai, who's not here. He's not with us a kingdom. He's not even in my inner circle. But you know what? He didn't bat an eyelash when I slept with the concubine. So let's hear what he has to say. I've known him to be a wise advisor to my father. Why is Avshalom doing this? I can't tell you a good answer to that. I can give you my hypothesis, which is Avshalom. There are two problems with what we've seen so far. One is I don't really believe Avshalom wants to kill his father, at least not at this point. I think Avshalom was expecting to show up and have David be like, okay, this is fine. So hearing from Achitofel, let's go kill him right now. I don't know. Something doesn't sit well enough with Avshalom that he has to go ask somebody else advice, right? I think the thing that doesn't sit well with him is A, he doesn't want to kill his father or doesn't want to know that is the inevitability. And B, Achitofel, I believe, made one other mistake, which is Achitofel put Achitofel at the center of this entire event. If you look back at the first pasuk, he doesn't say,
go ahead.
Yeah, he doesn't say, you, O king, go out. Remember, how did David get messed up in the first place? He didn't go out to battle with the people.
Right.
Achitofel is like, I, Achitofel, will lead an army to kill the king, and I will bring everybody back to you. Sure, you'll bring everybody back to me. Like, wait a minute, hold on. Why are you leading the army? You're the advisor. Something gave Avshalom enough pause that he wants to hear a second opinion over here. So they summon Hushai. Vayavu Hushai el Avshalom. Vayomer Avshalom elav. Lemor kadavar hazeh. Diber Achitofel hanaases devaro im ayin atadaber. So here's what Achitofel had to say. Should we do what he says? Yes or no? Vayomer Hushai el Avshalom. And Hushai responds, and again, he has to be very delicate over here. Lo tova ha'etza asher ya'atz Achitofel bepam hazos. I know Achitofel is always right. You know Achitofel is always right. Everybody agrees to that. Nobody is always right. This one time, he made a mistake. Vayomer Hushai. And this is also something you find all the time in Tanakh. Pasuk 7 started with Vayomer Hushai, so I don't need a Vayomer Hushai in Pasuk 8. Why do I have a Vayomer Hushai in Pasuk 8? Usually, that is to tell you that at the end of Pasuk 7, he was expecting a response. He didn't get a response. There was stunned silence. So now Hushai has to continue the conversation. Vayomer Hushai, again, after people's jaws hit the floor when he said Achitofel's advice was no good, he has to now rush in and back that up. Vayomer Hushai, you know your father, you know his guys, they're insane. Umare nefesh, hema kadov shakul basadeh v'avicha ish milchama v'lo yalin es ha'am. He's not going to stop. They're on like full pursuit out of here. He's like a wild bear when he's been, when you take the kids away from the bear, they go berserk. You don't know what you're messing with. First of all, right now, I can guarantee you, he's not just like hanging out with the troops. He's holed up in some like cavern somewhere. He knows the whole terrain. And then you know what's going to happen? You're not even going to find David. He's going to be hiding out in some cave. You're going to find his men. You're going to engage with his men, and some of your guys are going to die. All it takes is a few tweets for people to show pictures of dead Avshalom soldiers, and then all hell's going to break loose because people are going to say, oh, Avshalom's army was routed. There's going to be disinformation. It's going to throw everything into a panic. The second one of your guys starts to die, and people are going to hear about that. They're going to say, yeah, there was a rout, everyone, disaster. All the people of Avshalom got routed, right? There's going to be disinformation. People are going to believe that your army was routed, and now you've lost all of the momentum that you have. Who Gam ben Chayil, and you know your father is also a mighty warrior. Right? We mentioned here the bear and the lion. Those are the ones that David mentioned that he
killed when Shaul recruited him.
Correct. Himas ki yodea kol yisro ki gibor avicha ubnei Chayil asher ito. David's not going to be. He's not going to be shaken. He's going to shake them. everybody knows that your father is a mighty courageous fighter. Okay, so that's how he puts the fear of God into Avshalom. What Hushai is describing here is 100% true. It's just not true anymore. What he described is David of yore. David when he was in his prime, David when he was active and fighting, and right, that's the David that we knew and loved. That is not the passive David that we've had in the last few chapters, right?
Avshalom was around. He was gone for a while.
Right. The whole reason Avshalom felt that he could move ahead was because David was sitting on his hands, right?
But he could also think, since he's not there, he could still think that he has strength.
Right. Okay, so I don't come with problems, I come with solutions. Here's the solution. Make a conscription. Let's get a gigantic army. And we're going to have as many soldiers as the sand of the ocean. And then you yourself will march them into battle. Notice he picked up on how Achitofel put himself in the battle. He's putting Avshalom in the battle. Ubanu love, and then it's shock and awe. We're going to completely overwhelm David's forces. We're going to be like the way dew covers the land. And we will wipe out the whole thing. All we have to do is take like a little bit of time, gather enough people to make this a foregone conclusion, and then you don't have to worry about misinformation, about missing David. We're going to swarm the whole situation. V'im el ir Yasef, and if he runs away to the city, v'hisiu kol Yisrael esa ir ha'i chabalim v'sachav nu oso ad hanachal ad asher lo nimsa sham gam soror. It doesn't matter. He comes into the city, no problem. We'll take ropes and we'll pick apart the walls of the city brick by brick. We have 1,000,000 soldiers. There's nothing that can stand in our way, even down to the last pebble. Vayomer Avshalom v'chol ish Yisrael tova atzas Hushai ha'arki me atzas Achitofel. This is much better advice. We like the way this sounds. There's more pomp and circumstance. Avshalom gets to lead the army. Maybe Avshalom subconsciously also hears that I don't have to kill my father tonight. This is the way we're gonna go. And now the narrator kind of jumps in here and says, "V'Adonai tziva lahafer et atzas Achitofel hatova leba'avur havi Adonai el Avshalom es hara'ah." God decided to do this to contradict Achitophel's advice, which was good. It's hatova, meaning it's hatova for Avshalom, in order that Avshalom should come to ruin. Now, this for me is just a hard pasuk to understand theologically. Avshalom is just doing what God wanted him to do in the first place. Meaning, the Navi told David, "Your friend is going to come and sleep with your concubines and take over the kingship from you." And right?
I don't think it's that.
No, not that.
No. It's,
Why? Does
Gemara,
Avshalom have free will?
The Gemara says when it's talking about building the Gog on your roof,
Nimpol ha-nofel.
Nofel.
Yeah.
He's gonna fall. Don't let it be from your roof. This is gonna happen to David. Don't let you be the guy that's causing this whole thing to happen. You know, like Avshalom didn't have to do all this song and dance and drama and seize the throne and all that stuff. Like it could have been one of the Plishtim. It could have been one of the other sons. But he's like, I'm gonna do this. This is gonna be awesome for me.
I hear that. I definitely hear
that's
that.
That's my explanation. I don't know
This is
nothing.
Hevi Hashem al Avshalom es hara'ah.
Yeah.
Wanted it to be Avshalom.
Yeah, guess what? Okay, you want to strike?
No, he wanted it to be Avshalom. The pasuk says, right?
The pasuk says someone has to do it, and he's going to be your.
Avshalom. He wanted a specific person to bring the.
No. The way I'm reading this pasuk, I think, is that Hashem wants to ruin Avshalom. Hevi Hashem el Avshalom es hara. Not that Avshalom should bring the wickedness on David, but that the bad situation should fall on Avshalom. Meaning Avshalom, you're now being punished. Your God is forcing you to accept the wrong advice, which normally doesn't happen, right? Normally we don't play with people's free will. If
He wanted to punish Avshalom.
he wanted to punish Avshalom, the question is, A, are we taking Avshalom's free will away in order to punish him, which is
I got it.
highly unusual, and B, did Avshalom really do any of this out of his own desire to hurt David?
Not the kingship.
He wanted the kingship. Okay. So David's prayer worked, right? David davened in the last parak that Hashem should confound the advice of Achitofel, and that is exactly what God does over here. Vayomer Hushai el tzadok ve'elav yason. Now we get the spy network is put into motion. So Hushai says to tzadok and Yasar kohanim kazos v'kazos ya'atz Achitofel Avshalom ziknei Yisrael v'kazos ya'atzti ani. He gives them all the information. Here's what Achitofel said. Here's what I said. I don't know. I'm inserting here. I'm editorializing for Hushai. I don't know if they're going to accept my advice permanently, or they said maybe they're yesing me and then they're going to go do. I don't know. I'm giving you all the information. Go pass all that information over to David. In other words, you're still not in the clear. Even though it seems like I bought David some time, David, don't act as if I bought you any time, because maybe they're going to change their mind. Just get out of Dodge. I don't want you to all be swallowed up. Get out of here, pass over as fast as you can. And Yehonatan and Achimatz are in this town of Ein Rogel. And we now have enlisted a maidservant into the spy network over here. She goes and tells them, so you can picture, the scene of one messenger passing, the notes to the next one and doing it in kind of an incognito way to try to make sure they're not arousing suspicion. Yet they do in fact arouse suspicion. Vayaro some nar, and a nameless nar sees what happened. V'yagel Avshalom, and he tells Avshalom that hey, there's people that are trying to give David information, trying to get out of the city. V'yelchu shnehem mehira v'yavo el beis ish babachurim, and they come to the house of a man in Bachurim. Again, Chazal have the commutative property of conservation of characters. We've already met somebody who's from Bachurim. Who was that? Shimi ben Gera. So Chazal will now assume that the house that they are coming to in Bachurim is the same home of Shimi ben Gera. Velo ber bechatzero vayerdu sham, and they go into his courtyard and go down over there to the house of this nameless person. But they're running away from Avshalom is sending people after them to stop them from informing David. Vatikacha isha, and the wife of this nameless man from Bachurim, who we'll assume is Shimi ben Gera's wife, she comes vatifroshes hamasach al pnei habe'er. Remember, they're down in this well in the yard. So she spreads a canopy over them al pnei habe'er vatishtach alav harifos, and there's some grain they have over here, groats. She dumps a pile of grain on top of the sheet. And Velona Davar, and they couldn't figure out that anybody was hiding because it's all been covered over, and it looks like that's been there forever. Avshalom el Isha Habaita, and the messengers of Avshalom come to this woman's house. Vayomer Achimatz v'Yehonatan. Where are Achimatz and Yehonatan? Vatomer lehem Isha Avru Michal Hamayim v'Yivakshu v'Lo Matzu v'Yishu Shalayim. They crossed over the water, just a little bit yonder. They looked for them, they couldn't find them, so they returned to Yerushalayim. What story did I just tell you? What story does this remind you of?
With Yoshua
and with the spies, yeah. Right? It's the same exact story. You have the two spies. They come, they're hidden. The people look for them. She tells them they're not here. Go out, look for them somewhere else. They go, they can't find them. They return back to the city. Carbon copy. Vayhi acharei lechdem vayalu meha be'er, and now they leave. She takes them out of the be'er. Vayelchu v'yagidu l'melech David vayomer el David kumu v'ivru meheras hamayim ki kacha ya'atz aleichem Achitofel. You got to get out of here because this is the advice that Achitofel provided, and for all we know, it's going to be put into action immediately. Vayakam David v'chol ha'am asher ito vayavru es hayarden. They now pass over the Yarden. They're in Transjordan on the east of the Yarden River, ad or haboker, morning time. Again, the timing over here is a little confusing to me. Ad achad until there was no one left on the other side. Lo ne'adar asher lo avar sayarden. Everyone has now crossed over the Yarden. V'Achitofel ra'a ki lo ne'asa atzaso. Achitofel sees that his advice was not taken. V'yachavush es achamor. He saddles the donkey. V'yakam v'yelech el beito, and he goes home el iro, to his city. V'yitzav el beito, and he commands his last will and testimony. V'yichanik, and he commits suicide. V'yamas, what's that?
He strangles himself.
Strangles himself, correct. Vayamas, and he dies. V'kaver bekever aviv, and he's buried in his family plot. Okay, what just happened over here?
Well, first of all, if you're gonna tell me that, like, the dude from Bachurim is Shimi Ben Gera, why is his wife the one who's part of David's spy network?
Right.
Like
No, she's not part of the. It seems like she was just kind of recruited in, but yes, I hear you.
Right, but like, I mean, is this just for like, just to make the story more dramatic? That
Right.
like this one dude's throwing like feces and dirt and stones at like the hero, and like but his wife really like,
Right.
is like, oh no, she's really a loyalist. Like, okay.
The wives always save the day. It's like with Korach with Om Pellet,
Yeah.
So why did Achitofel do what he just did?
It doesn't make sense to me.
So there are other options. He could have defected. So
Right.
the assumption is he knows he's always right, and if they don't follow his advice, he knows that he's screwed. Which means David is going to end up back in power, and if David comes back to power, he's a Mor b'Malchus, and he's
right.
dead.
He could be right. He's such a chess master that he knows that this one thing going wrong will lead to all the other dominoes falling.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Not only that, it gets better. Chazal say that if David comes back into power, David will execute him as a Mor b'Malchus. A Mor b'Malchus, their property gets inherited by the king. So when he comes home and he commands his house, his last will and testament gets implemented. So he's able to make sure his Yerusha goes to whoever he wants it to go to. That's A. And B, a Mor b'Malchus is not allowed to be buried in the family plot. So he also makes sure that he commits suicide and can be buried in his family plot rather than waiting for David to come. That's their explanation for everything that we saw over here. To me, it seems like that he has some other options. He could defect to David's side. He could pull a Yoav and just ignore the king and go do his plan anyway. I guess he sees that unless it's done the way that he has advised it to be done, it's not going to pan out. Yeah.
It's still hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's just finish up the parak over here. The David ba Machanaima, the Avshalom avar sayarden hu v'chol ish Yisrael imo. So David comes to Machanaim, and Avshalom, it seems like, actually did sort of listen to the advice of Achitofel. He comes out and crosses over the Yarden. The S Amasa Sam Avshalom Tachas Yoav, and now Amasa, who's also part of David's family, everyone is related over here. Avshalom puts Amasa in charge of the army in place of Yoav. Alatzavav Amasa ben Ish Ushmo Yisra HaYisraeli Asher Ba El Avigail Bas Nachash Achos Truria Aim Yoav. I'm not even going to get into the whole family tree over here. Maybe we'll do a chart for that next time. Vayichan Yisrael ve'Avshalom Eretz HaGilad, and Yisrael and Avshalom encamp in the land of Gilad. Vayhi Kivot David Machanaima. David, remember a few psukim ago, arrived at Machanaim. Veshovi ben Nachash meRabas ben Amon uMacher ben Amiel milo Davar Barzilai Hagiladi miroglim. He gets greeted by the most unusual cast of characters you can imagine. He has Shovi ben Nachash, who is from Rabba Bnei Ammon. David, if you remember previously, has like decimated Ammon. Then he meets Machir ben Amiel, who's from Lo Davar, which is where Mephibosheth was from before when he was hiding out from David in Lo Davar. And then you have Barzilai Hagiladi from Roglim. Mishka v'sapot ukli yotzer v'chitim v'sorim v'kemach v'kali upol v'adashim v'kali. There's something a little weird about this pasuk because it's not even introduced. The assumed explanation over here is they brought him all of this stuff, including couches, basins, earthenware, also wheat, barley, flour, parched grain, beans, lentils, and parched grain. Yes, we have kali twice. There are those that just take that out, like the Septuagint. Udvash v'chema v'tzon u'shvot bakar. and they also brought honey and curds, a flock, and cheese. Higishu David. They brought all this to David. La'am asher ito le'echol ki amru ha'am ra'ev v'ayef v'tzama b'midbar. They said the troops must have been completely famished and thirsty in the midbar, so we're going to provide everything that they could possibly need. Let's
Why
do.
did the shvot is cheese? I thought gvina was cheese.
I don't know. That is beyond my
Old timey cheese.
Yeah. Okay, just very quickly, Chazal in Pirkei Avos, the sixth parak, Mishnah Gimel, they see Achitofel as having taught David two things: to learn bechavrusa and to pray with intensity. For that, David actually praises Achitofel. That's in Tehillim 55, Psukim 13 through 16. Okay, summary. We saw two additional people who met David on his way. They were from Binyamin. Ziba was clearly on David's side, but perhaps with dubious motives, while Shimi was clearly against David, though perhaps for pure motives, especially when given that David had several of Shaul's family killed. We're going to talk about that at the end of the book. In the meantime, there's dissension in the ranks of Avshalom, as Achitofel's first suggestion was accepted, but his latter was foiled by Hushai. This leads Achitofel to Achitofel's demise by his own hand, and David's successful escape with the help of his spy network. Next time, we're going to see the stunning and tragic battle of father against son. This is the end, beautiful friend. Thank you for joining us on our journey of learning, and I hope you will tune in for another episode soon, Mirz Hashem. Be well.